If you're an autism mom, chances are you're struggling with a picky eater. With that, there are a host of other problems that you're working against. And let's face it, good diet is the foundation for any kind of healing to happen. Hi, I'm Farah Danish, your autism family coach. Today I have with me Rita, a functional diagnostic health practitioner. She is the author of Picky Eaters Nutrition and Mealtime Routines for Your Picky Eater. Hi, Rita. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Farah.
So, Rita, we will be covering a host of questions, starting off with your journey specifically, and different types of diets that are out there and what your thoughts are on it, and parents who are considering making these changes. So what should they be looking into? What a good diet for good sleep should look like, what cookware to use so that we're not killing nutrition in our food, and my favorite, where do we start? So let's start with the first one. Please tell us what you do and why you do it.
Yeah, so I'm in the functional medicine health space now, and it really wasn't something that I had intended on doing as I was growing up. However, when my son Jordan, as he was growing, my husband and I started noticing little differences. The biggest one was not speaking. Just sound was coming out from his mouth. When we brought it up to the pediatrician, he has said, oh, he's still too young. Let's wait for 18 months. I come from an Italian background and my husband comes from a Chinese background. So we were both trying to implement our respective languages. But the doctor had said, maybe he's delayed, maybe Jordan's delayed because you guys are learning, you're teaching him these different languages. But even after 18 months, he still wasn't speaking. So that it was just the speaking that was a concern for us. But then, when we had scheduled to see our developmental pediatrician, she had noticed that, there was no eye contact, there was no pointing, there was no responding to his name, there was no appropriate play, like pretend play. He didn't have any of that. As he continued to grow, that's when the behavior started, the picky eating started. I know that there's a lot of talk about, autism and, what causes it, what doesn't cause it. Jordan never regressed. So it's not that I can say that there was one thing that happened that we started to see a change, right? I guess the difference between Jordan and other children is when a child regresses, you have a starting point. You know what he was capable of, and you can move forward with that. With Jordan, we didn't know what he was capable of. We just never saw anything. So we started with speech therapy and ABA therapy even before his diagnosis. So Jordan learned to pronunciate his first word a little bit after the age of 2, and that was ball. And then at the age of 2.5, that's when we got our diagnosis. And like many families, we were just given a list of to-dos. And we went out, and Jordan he'll be 14 actually this year. So I guess 11 years ago, we didn't have all that information online, but I'm an investigator type. So I went online at the capacity that socially, the internet was. I did my research and stuff, and the agency that I was allocated to who provided ABA, it was just a social program that was offered at the time. I noticed that they had a treatment program. Jordan went into a treatment program run by the Ministry of Mental Health here in Toronto. And it was like really winning the lottery, because you had your ABA therapist, your speech therapist, your OT. We had a psychologist. We had a social worker. We really had a team for Jordan. Yeah, so that was how our journey started. And it wasn't until I think when Jordan was in grade 2 that I was seeing a chiropractor, and I had my own health issues. And she had said, when we had started speaking about Jordan, she was, oh, why don't we do some functional lab tests on Jordan? So that was my journey into the world of functional medicine, functional nutrition. And that's when she had said, you need to change his diet. And I said, well, he's a picky eater. I can't just change his diet like that. Yeah. And Jordan would eat, we would go to McDonald's because he liked his chicken nuggets and fries. And,
Yeah.
he would eat his pizza, fish crackers. I would buy them when they were on sale for 99 cents. I would buy like a dozen because they would be his fillers. And at the time I was that mom, as long as he eats, I'm happy. But
Yeah.
I didn't understand what it meant to eat nutrient-dense foods, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not something that, you're taught at all.
Exactly.
Years prior, I was told to put him on a gluten-free, dairy-free diet. And I'm sure most parents can agree. They tried it, but it didn't work. But
Yeah.
my understanding of a gluten-free diet 10 years ago versus a gluten-free diet now are totally different. Because my gluten-free diet years ago was replacing the cookies, the pizza, the pasta, and the bread to the gluten-free version.
Yeah.
If I were to answer that question today, gluten-free means nutrient-dense foods, whole foods,
That's very interesting.
fruits, vegetables, meats, or proteins, healthy fats.
Wow, I haven't heard of that one before. That's a new one. I mean, because I've done this. I have literally replaced, you know, gluten-free cookies and gluten-free cakes and gluten-free. But this is such an interesting take to replace it with actually, actual nutritionally dense food.
Yeah. But that's the
Really?
hard part, right? And at the
Yeah.
time, I said, wow, like when Jordan was in this treatment program, his two teachers, we had the teacher from the school board and a teacher therapist who now I have on, I would like to say my team because I'm my own person in my practice, but I have Jordan's corner teacher therapist helping me, especially when we have these children that are severe picky eaters. But they had so many strategies and tools on how to get Jordan to eat the food. So it's those strategies and tools that I use now to help other children, but also all of those strategies that I have in that free picky eating ebook that you have spoken about, right?
Yeah. Sorry, go
Yeah,
on.
no, and going about gluten, my thing always is, why? What's
Yeah.
wrong with gluten, right? And it's a
How will
lot,
it
and
be?
it's not something that we learn, and it's something that I, learned myself. But, gluten is a protein, but to explain a little bit of biology, we have a tube that starts from our mouth and then
Yeah. Goes all
our
the way down.
bum, right? And this tube, when we eat, the food doesn't go in our body. It goes through this tube. Right. So before we're about to eat, our brain signals our stomach, we need to start with digestion, right? So get these digestive enzymes out to help. So what happens is that every time we eat, these digestive enzymes, they just cut our food like into chops, and our, this tube, this tube is the length of a tennis court. Maybe you've heard that before or not.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time for our food to digest. And then when it gets to our small intestines, that's when all of these now juices go through the gut lining into our body, into our bloodstream. And when it's in our bloodstream, all of these amino acids, these juices feed our cells. And I think when we think about the importance of food, we need to understand that the food that we're eating is to feed our cells, because we are made up of cells, like trillions of cells, right? But gluten, so again, gluten is a protein wheat, and it's the gliadin that our body can't digest, right? So they form peptides. Yeah, so gluten is a protein in wheat. So it's the gliadin that our body can't digest. And during digestion, these peptides are formed. One is called exomorphin. And when it comes to dairy, it's called casomorphin. And they're like opioids, right? So they're similar to that drug, and they bind to our opioid receptors, and that affects our mood, our behavior. So that's one of the reasons why um, gluten is recommended that we remove, and dairy, because they have the same, I guess, results as you taking a drug like opioids, right? Um, Another thing is, because our body doesn't digest it, you have to think of when we're eating it or when it's going through that tube, it's like a glass. So it's chopping parts of our tube.
Oh,
Right. So we have these
didn't know.
villi in our small intestines um, that like carpet. They're kind of
Yeah.
like moving to absorb the nutrients into the lining,
Yeah.
to go through the lining. But what this gliadin does is that it chops these villi so you can't absorb anything. Right.
Mm.
And then gluten also produces zonulin, and zonulin causes inflammation, and it causes these enterocytes to loosen. So now you have gaps, and then they're
On
cutting the gut lining.
yeah,
When
yeah,
they
yeah.
cut the gut lining, think of it as a cheesecloth. You just want the cheese intact and those juices to come out, those nutrients. But when
Mm.
you eat gluten and you don't have a very sound gut lining, then it cuts the cloth, and then you get these particles getting into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there. The immune system says, hey, what's this? We need to attack it because it's foreign. So it's doing its job, but it doesn't understand if it's a foreign or if it's an actual food particle. And that's when antibodies get created. And that's why when families do a food sensitivity test, they see all these food sensitivities. Food sensitivities, those foods aren't the problem. They're a result of the problem. They confirm that there's a leaky gut.
Mm.
Leaky gut.
Mm. Oh, that's interesting. And because specifically when you were talking about, the replacing, I mean, that was my favorite one, by the way, Rita. The replacing, that was an eye opener for me. And every time I hear different parents using different types of diets, and they all sound like, they should make sense. Specifically, a carnivorous diet like an Atkins diet or a keto diet. Keto diet is like very popular, not just for women, but even for kids. For the same reason, to remove carbs, because like children experience a foggy brain, moms do too. So let's just get rid of the carbs. But is that realistic? Is that sustainable? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So especially when you have a picky eater, it's really hard. Right? Because if you're removing the carbs, then you're like, and when I say carbs, we both know what we're talking about, like the cookies, the crackers, the not healthy foods, right? Because fruits and vegetables are carbs as well.
Exactly.
Right? So if you have a picky eater, you can't really remove everything, right? You need to meet your child where they're at, and you first need to start adding before you can start removing. That's my approach anyway. Yeah,
That's
you really can't do, well, you can do cold turkey. We kind of did cold turkey with Jordan.
Did that
Pardon? Yeah, so like, and it was such a long time ago. And Jordan, it was just maybe a few years ago that he started eating everything to the point where he eats more variety than me. Right? But yeah, like my husband at the time always said, moms lack the tough love.
I'll give him that.
Because, and I guess I'm very supportive of him, that he was great, great supporter of everything that I did with Jordan, and he helped, he was just being very supportive. But he always said that children resist change just like we adults resist change, and we're not doing anything bad. But at the same time, like, we as parents need to know where our threshold is, right? I have some moms that I work with that they feel bad, that the child really wants a specific food that's going to hurt them, right? So, number one, I say, I don't want to sound harsh, but if I'm telling you that, if you think about when you're giving this to your child because they really want it, just think of them as a drug addict asking for that drug, because essentially that's what it is. Like, that's the harsh way to put it, right? But then
Yeah.
secondly, like, don't have it. Like, don't bring it in the home. Or if there's, like in Jordan's case, there's fish crackers that he used to have all the time. The way we transitioned to a better version was buying both and then start implementing it.
But the thing, Rita, is you just mentioned about how uncomfortable change is. And while you were talking, I couldn't help thinking that, when moms resist trying something new or changing, it's not necessarily the child that's resisting at first, it's the mom resisting it because it's a big change for her.
Yeah,
She has
it's
to.
a lifestyle change for everyone. Like, you cannot expect your child to start eating, I don't want to say
Anything.
better foods, but we know what you and I both know, like, better foods if they don't eat it themselves. Like, you can't introduce broccoli to your child if you don't eat broccoli yourself, because we're our children's greatest teachers. They learn through us. And it's a change for the whole family, and it's not a change that you can implement within a day or a week. Like, it takes time. Our home has been transformed, I'd say, these last every year. Like, I make different changes, to the point now where Jordan always questions, is this organic? Does it have glyphosate? So, Jordan has he has rigidity, a lot of rigidity. Like, he's very programmed when he says things and does things, and that's just the autism in him. I was only able to confirm or confidently say that he has true autism up until, like, maybe a few years ago, when he became fully conversational. He does have a language impairment, but fully conversational, his brain just works differently, right? So all the issues that he had years ago, he still has. They're just like a 1 out of 10, whereas before it was like a 9 out of 10.
That's a big change.
Yeah. 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 And I, not that
Okay.
I want to change him, but he just thinks differently. He sees things differently, and I can't change that. That's just his
Exactly.
way of thinking. That's perception.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you say about good diet for sleep? Because that's a big problem a majority of autism parents experience.
Like, why are there children that have, like, sleep disruptions, right? But sleep can be attributed to like anxiety, stress, and then gut related issues. And gut related issues is a big deal in our world because a lot of these children are picky eaters. One big thing is when you have gut related issues like leaky gut, there's an endotoxin in our gut called LPS, lipopolysaccharide, and it's in our gut, and it's endo means inside. So as long as it's in our gut, it's not a problem. But when we have leaky gut, or when our gut becomes permeable, then they leak into the bloodstream, right? So you have this toxin now in our gut that's there. It does what it has to do, and then it kind of, like, gets out of our system. But when it gets into our bloodstream, it causes inflammation. And then this inflammation disrupts hormones, right? So it affects melatonin, it affects serotonin, and then it alters something called tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin, which is a precursor to melatonin. right? So
Okay.
when we have this inflammation, that path gets compromised, and then it gets into another path where there's neural compounds that get produced, right? So that causes a reaction, and then it affects the way you sleep. It induces brain toxicity. It increases cortisol. Um, so when we're sleeping, our melatonin needs to be high and our
Well,
cortisol needs to be low. And when we talk about cortisol, when we're in constant stress, our cortisol goes up because it's preparing our body for fight or flight, right? But what's supposed to happen is that when we're in fight or flight, we get that initial stress response, and then it's supposed to decrease, and then we're supposed to go back to normal. But that doesn't happen for most of us anyways, because we're constantly in fight or flight, like us parents anyways, right? But with children that are like suffering from anxiety, or they're constantly stressed, cortisol also gets into our gut, and then it releases something called interleukin 6, IL-6, and then it just perpetuates the cortisol cycle all over again, right?
wow.
So then that even causes digestion issues and your sleep, right? So it's like if you have a leaky gut, then it affects you because of tryptophan, because of cortisol, the constant cortisol constantly circling back, not allowing your body to rest. But like
Yeah.
even children that are constipated, same thing. Yes, fiber is a big deal. Not drinking enough water is a big deal. But when you're in constant stress, that inflammation affects part of your brain where it doesn't make that connection. Okay, now I need to go. Right.
So,
When you're in
right.
constant stress, then it creates that leaky gut. Like that's why there's a big topic on, the gut and the brain, because they're
Yeah.
constantly communicating to each other. Another thing, sometimes, there'll be kids that wake up in the middle of the night and they're just like ready to start their day,
Yeah.
right? So one thing I usually recommend, again, you can there's a routine that you can work with, like you can do an Epsom salt bath before going to bed, because the magnesium helps relax. Limiting screen time also helps. Just having some mindful or relaxation techniques, but going to the diet for food. I always ask, what's the last meal your child is having?
Mm.
Right? So does your child have a bedtime snack? Right? And I always recommend, again, that should be balanced. Add some fats. Don't give them naked carbs, because that's going to spike their insulin. That's going to spike their cortisol. That's going to decrease the melatonin.
That is so interesting, Rita, because I've always heard that if you have to have carbs at all, and it's not, I'm not speaking about autistic children necessarily. I'm talking about from a diet perspective. We moms are told that if you're following a certain diet, whatever that diet is, it's okay to have carbs at night because carbs basically slow you down, and it's okay to slow down at night. So it's all right to throw in a bit of carb there, but I I totally missed the connection of the insulin spike.
Carbs
Yeah.
don't slow down. You can slow it down by adding nuts or protein.
Okay, that's a really that's
Yeah, so
interesting.
like if a child wants to have maybe rice cakes, then add like a nut butter, add some avocado, add some nuts.
Or meat.
Yeah, meat, like whatever. Even if they have like a Greek yogurt, yeah, like you can add some protein powder in there. You can add some, coconut flakes in there.
What kind of protein powder would you? Is there something to look out for in when you go to pick up a protein?
Yeah, I just like plain protein. I don't like whey, because whey is like
Yeah.
dairy.
came across white egg powder. Is that something that you could
I've
um
never heard of that before, but collagen is good. Bone broth is good. That has protein in it.
in fat?
I use a kit protein.
Okay.
It's very clean. It's beef.
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned going back to the diets.
In
There is no real specific diet. Like there's many diets, but the easiest one is going gluten-free, dairy-free, and replacing with whole foods, fruits, vegetables, protein,
the
fats.
classic.
The classic. Yeah. I find that going through this journey is already overwhelming. And then if you start thinking about, a keto diet or Atkins diet or carnivore diet,
Them check
it's
protocols
really
and yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Nemchek protocol. I'm
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand that. So my next question is in terms of cookware. I've actually personally I've slowly starting to replace with steel. Is there anything else that we should be mindful of when we are cooking?
Yes, non-stick cookware contains a coating that we all know as Teflon.
Yeah.
And that releases toxins and can degrade the nutritional quality of the food. So I would opt for stainless steel or cast iron or even ceramic. Stainless steel is hard to work with.
Liquid.
Everything gets stuck.
I'm struggling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but so for those that have stainless steel or interested in stainless steel, the trick with stainless steel is heating it up with nothing in it, getting it
Okay.
to a certain temperature, then throwing just like a drop of water to see if it kind of like explodes, then you know it's
Right.
ready. And then add your butter or your oil and let it sit for a bit, not overheat. And that's when you can start adding your foods where it won't stick. So I've tried many times doing my omelet, and I'm just very happy when it doesn't stick. So, but going back to like cookware, trying to stay away from aluminum cookware because that's been linked to neurological disorders, avoiding plastics, microwaving plastics. We completely removed, we don't have a microwave at home anymore. When we renovated our kitchen, I said, forget about the microwave. We don't need it. We'll just do what, my mom did growing up. We just reheated on the stove. We get used to it after a while. Plastics contain BPAs, and it releases that into the food. So if you are going to use the microwave, then don't use it in plastics.
Oh my God, I know a lot of moms, I know the connection between plastic and using it inside the microwaves. I've seen so many people use this covered lid so that the food doesn't, splat
Yeah.
inside the microwave. And I'm like, okay, the microwaving is bad enough, and then we've actually added the plastic on
Yeah.
top of
Yeah.
to
And I
protect the food.
we just need to bring awareness and just provide that education. And,
Thank you for
for
that.
those that are listening today, just do one thing at a time. Like, don't overwhelm yourself and stress yourself. Like, do one thing at a time until you get comfortable, and then you can make another change.
Yeah, and something as small as, I mean, something as small as not using plastic in the microwave is a big one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you can move on to not using the microwave.
Yeah.
That could be a step.
Even like not using tap water, filtered water. A lot of the tap water is contaminated with like lead, pesticides, chlorine, aluminum, just so many things. So, reverse osmosis, or there's even like other things that you can buy.
Okay. And the most important one, as a parent, if I were to come to you, Rita, what would you advise me? I mean, where should I start? What should I, you know, where should I take my first step with my computer?
Yeah, with your picky eater, you need to meet your child where they're at. And my first step with every picky eater is self nutrition is adding foods into the existing foods your child is eating without compromising taste. So it's not really hiding foods. You're just adding foods that provide nutrients that are somewhat masked. It's not gonna um, cause your child to like stop eating it, right? So, for example, if you're making pancakes for your child, add a little bit of protein powder, right?
Okay.
Or add some like psyllium husk, right?
Mm.
So these are two, or like there's a mom that I'm working with now. They don't eat meat. So she makes a lot of, she's Indian background, so she makes a lot of lentils. So I
Mm.
said, cook the lentils, puree them, and add them into the batter, right? Like that's just one example. If they're eating, chicken nuggets, then maybe you can throw in some almond powder when you're breading them on top of the bread or before you add the breadcrumbs, right? So you're starting to add nutrient dense foods without compromising the way the food tastes or look while you're starting to work on expanding the diet.
Okay. So you're not starving the child because
No, you're
we
not
know
starving the
that.
child. But again, going back with those chicken nuggets, like there's stealth nutrition, then there's, introducing new foods or introducing a side dish with the food that they're already enjoying. So, if you're having chicken nuggets instead of ketchup, then try to use a different dipping sauce. So you have the food that your child is currently eating, but you're just kind of changing it,
Yeah.
right?
Tweaking
Or
it.
yeah,
Yeah. That.
there's something called food chaining. So you want your child is currently eating chicken nuggets, but you're working towards a grilled chicken, right? So
Mm.
there's steps that you can follow for that. And then one of the biggest ones is sensory SOS therapy that I also work on, sequential oral sensory. And that is exposing your child, like getting your child to try a new food. So let's go say with broccoli, your child won't touch the broccoli, you put it on their plate and they just don't want it. So number one, that's too overwhelming for them, right? So indirectly expose them to the broccoli.
Sorry
So,
about that.
one thing could be, go grocery shopping with them, have them help you with the groceries. So if they may not even touch the broccoli, that's fine. Put the broccoli in the bag and give them the bag to put in the cart. Right.
That could be
So
your
like
goal
that's
for
step one. Yeah. Or like when you're cooking it, like have them help you wash the broccoli. No expectations that they need to eat it, but at the same time, them being exposed to it, they're learning to smell it. They're learning like their visualization is accepting that new food. Right? When you're cooking it,
Then
put
you
it on
put
the
it
table. Put it at the end of the table. So
in.
there's no expectations. And then you can slowly introduce it. And then, start with a little piece like, okay, can you pass me a piece of broccoli? Again, no expectation. Let's lick it. Let's kiss it. Like, let's touch it.
Yeah.
Let's play with it. There's just so many
Wait.
strategies. It really is dependent on where the child is at.
Yeah, I remember doing this with Suleiman. I would ask him to make a face with broccoli, carrots, peas, and yeah,
Yeah.
it was and once he got comfortable touching it, he was okay with then putting it,
Yeah.
bringing it to his mouth.
And you can't rush it because you want your child to have a positive experience with food. You don't want them to be stressed because when we eat, our body needs to be in a calm state because that will allow us to digest and absorb those nutrients. When you're in constant stress, again, when your body is in that parasympathetic state, you want to you need to be calm. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
not am I getting confused
No,
with the parasympathetic and the
no,
sympathetic?
it is. No, it is
Yeah,
parasympathetic.
I
You
sometimes I
want
get
you want them
confused
to
with
be
the two.
calm.
Yeah,
No, no,
you
no. Yeah,
want them to be calm. If they're
yeah,
not calm, they're not digesting any of their foods because their
yeah.
body, like you increased cortisol,
all the blood is going to the extremities because you need to attack this
Yeah,
foreign.
it has a negative impact on your
Yeah.
system as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah.
the therapeutic benefits.
Yeah.
And great. Thank you so much, Rita. That's all we have time for. I mean, I could go on. There is so much to learn from you, and it's so much to unpack. I mean, I've been writing and writing nonstop because, I mean, I know I'm recording this, but you know, when you write things down, there's a different understanding and different kind of. So this has been amazing, and thank you so much, Rita, for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm happy to have spoken to you, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.